Okay, folks, the first thing we're going to do to set up Memoir 44 is decide which players are going to be the allies, which players are going to be the Axis players. Once we do that, we're going to handle their army bag, which has everything they need in miniatures and obstacles for their side, okay? The allies are green, and the Axis is gray. Okay, now these players are going to choose which side they're on, and then they're going to sit across from each other, and then they're going to have to make a decision on which mission they wish to play. Okay, so we're actually going to be doing the last mission in the book, which is number 16 for the basic missions. Okay, not the very last one, which is an Overlord mission. Okay, and that's number 16, Sovereign Gap, Vos Guess. I know I'm butchering that, sorry. So now we're going to look at our mission page, and it'll tell us which side of the map to use. Memoir 44 comes with two sides of the map. Okay, we have the beach and regular terrain map, okay, which depicts the ocean in these hexes here, beach, and then regular terrain back here. And then if we flip it over, we have just the regular terrain, okay? Now, one side of the map will have victory token spaces for the Allied, and then the other side will have victory token spaces for the Axis players. So, if we're looking at the map from this side, which is the Ally side, we'll be setting it up as though we are looking straight ahead. Okay, so this is the right side, left side, center. We're going to take a look at our mission page again, and we're going to look at the special order box next to the map. Okay, this will tell you all the tiles and obstacles you'll need for that specific mission. So for this mission, we need 20 hill tokens. Okay, now these tokens are double-sided. Sometimes they depict rivers and hills. Sometimes it's forest and hills, or rivers. Sometimes it's towns and forest. Okay, sometimes it's like hedgerows and rivers. Okay, so it's a combination of the different types of terrains used in the game. So for Sovereign Gap, we're going to need 20 hill tiles, 5 bend river tiles, 6 town tiles, 4 straight river tiles. Now some of these straight river tiles have like a slight curve in it, whereas the river bend tiles will have a 90-degree curve in it. And finally, for terrain anyway, we'll also need 7 of these forest tiles. Return all unused terrain tiles back to the box. They will not be used. So now it's a matter of simply looking at the picture in the mission and then matching up the tile in the hex in the picture of the mission where it belongs. Okay, so I'll do that and we'll come back. The type and color of the towns may be different than depicted in the map page. Alright, but as long as you have the correct number of town tiles, you'll be okay. Okay, now next, we're going to do our obstacles. Okay, now in this scenario, we have one bridge obstacle. The bridges are double-sided. One side is a bridge, other side is a bunker. Doesn't matter what the bridge looks like. And we are going to place that guy here on this river space. Okay, and then we have 3 of these German wire bundles. Okay, and 2 of these German sandbags. Okay, and again, this is depicted next to the map in the mission book under the setup border. Now we're going to take a look at our map again and then place the corresponding obstacles on the hex that they belong in. Okay, so we got one here, one here, one here, and then the sandbags we have one here, and the other is right here. Now take note that if during setup a player of a particular army ever runs out of their obstacles, their fixed obstacles, whether it be sandbags, wire, or hedgehogs here, then he would simply borrow a component from the other army, okay? So say the German player ran out of sandbags, then they would just borrow one from the Allied forces, and then, you know, the player would just have to take note that that is the German sandbag in this scenario. Same with the hedgehogs and the wire. Now once we're done that, we're going to start sending out troops. We'll start off over here with the Allies. So there will be an infantry squadron here. Then we have a squad of tanks here, here, and here. Okay, now I'm going to finish off the rest and we'll come back. Okay, so now we got the allied units out. Just one unit figure for each unit. Okay, now I'll start filling them in with the other units, figures for that unit. Normally, unless, you know, there's special forces, I know usually it's only the French special forces. With infantry units, there will be 4 figures to a unit. Okay, so we'll just fill in 3 more. So, now we filled in the infantry. I'd like to do this one at a time and then come back and fill them up, because as you can see, they get bunched up. And, you know, if you make a mistake on the placement of them, sometimes, you know, you have issues if you place whole 4 figures in one spot, you know. So this is how I do it. It's just a suggestion. You don't have to follow through with it. Okay, now we're going to go into our armor divisions or tanks. Okay, each unit of this will get 3 figures under most circumstances. Okay, some of the special units get 4, but in this scenario, everybody will get 3. And now we'll move on to the German army to do the same thing. Okay, so as you can see, I set up the German army just like I did the Allied army, with the exception of the artillery. They get 2 artillery figures. And if you needed a special force for either army, you would take the corresponding token. Okay, and if we look in the scenario book, down on the bottom, towards the bottom of the page, usually it'll say under special rules whether there are any special forces for your army. Okay, and if there are, you would simply take a token for that special force. Okay, now these are double-sided. Like this one has the Rangers on one side for the U.S., the French Resistance on the other. And then we have some here for the German elite forces, I think they're called. And then the English Pegasus. Okay, they're their English special forces. You simply take the token with the appropriate symbol on it and simply place it with that unit. Okay, during setup. And again, the map will tell you where that unit will be placed. Okay, now this scenario doesn't have any of those units, so we're simply going to remove that. During setup, I noticed I screwed up on the river here. This straight part, it was here underneath the bridge, and this turn section was up here. When I went to place the tanks, I realized that. Okay, so I just mixed it, you know, switched them around to fit them right. Okay, next thing we're going to do is give each player their card holder set here. Okay, they're interlocking pieces. One piece hits over the other in that little channel at the end there. Okay, and the groove always faces the player. Okay, next we're going to give our command cards here a shuffle. And then we're going to look at our scenario page. And down towards the bottom of the page, it'll say briefing. Okay, and this will tell you how many cards each player will get and which player will start off first. So for this scenario, the Axis here will get 4 cards. The Allies will get 6 cards. Then we'll put the rest of the cards off to the side, you know, where everybody can reach them. I'm going to do this off camera because it's a pretty big board. And then we will give each player their cards, and, you know, they simply just place them in here on their card holder. Okay. Now for this video, I'm just going to lay them down so they don't block your line of sight for anything. Now we're going to take these reference cards, okay, to tell you what the terrain is, some of the objects, and range for the different units. We're just going to take these cards, place them within easy reach of the players so they can reference them if they have to. Then we're going to set out the dice, the battle dice. Okay, I like to give 4 to each player. And then you are now ready to play Memoir 44. Okay, here we go with Memoir 44. Now, the object of Memoir 44 will vary from scenario to scenario, you know, which mission you're playing. And basically, the way you get victory points is either through individual unit figures, okay, like infantry, armor, or artillery, or these badges here. They're double-sided, one side for the Allies, one side for the Axis, okay? And these could be permanent or temporary victory points depending on the mission, okay, and they could be like taking over a bridge or a city or something to that extent, okay. And we'll get into how you collect these a little bit later on, but that's the gist of it. You want to get a number of victory points to win that mission or scenario. Keep your victory points here on this track. They're usually between 4 and 6, and whoever reaches the goal of the mission will win. Now, in each mission that you play, it'll tell you how many cards each side gets, and then who will start, with their turn. All right, and that's under the briefing section towards the bottom of the page. So in this case, the Axis has 4 cards, the Allies have 6 command cards, and they will start off first. To the right of that, it'll tell you the victory conditions. Okay, so in this scenario, we need 5 medals. And then there's also, if the Allies control 2 town hexes in Severn, they win immediately. So the town of Severn is up here. Okay, so if they control 2 of these hexes, they automatically win. All right, and then there's some special rules below that usually. Now, this could mean special units like the Rangers or the Pegasus units, or it could be stuff like special terrain rules. In this scenario, the hills are impassable and artillery cannot fire over them. Normally, artillery has no line of sight restrictions. They could shoot wherever they want to. In this scenario, hills are like mountains, I guess. They can't fire over. So what'll happen is whoever goes first will take their turn, and then the next player will take their turn, and it'll go back and forth until the victory conditions have been met by the players. So on a player's turn, they have 5 phases to go through. The first phase is play a card. Okay, now there's 2 types of cards in the game. First, we have these section cards. Okay, now the section cards, the base cards come in 4 different types. We have recon, probe, attack, and assault. From recon to attack will let you move up to 3 units in one section of the board. And then assault will let you move all of the units in one section of the board. Okay, and they are the base section cards. Now, if we look at the board, we can see these dotted red lines which split up the board into 3 different sections or flanks. You have the right, middle, and left. For the opposing player, it would be the reverse. It would be left, middle, right. Okay, so there's a dotted line here that controls this section or the middle section. And the middle section will run from this dotted red line to this dotted red line over here. Okay, and then we have the left section. Now, there are also some special section cards that'll let you move, like Recon and Force let you move 1 unit in each section. Okay, or the pincer move will let you move 2 units in the left and right flanks. So, there are the section cards. Okay, with them, you're just going to command different units in either one particular section or a combination of sections, depending on the card. And the cards will dictate how many units in each section that you can command. And we have these tactical cards, okay? These are the gray bordered ones. What they do is they will allow you to do special abilities with units, okay? And that depends on the card itself. There's quite a few of them. All right, so like the move out card here will let you issue an order to 4 infantry units, no matter where on the board they are. So unlike the sectional cards where you have to stick to usually 1 unit in a section or multiple units in a section, this will allow you to command 4 infantry units, these guys here, in any part of the board that you wish to. Okay, so I could command like these guys, and then these guys and those guys over there. Okay, with the 1 card. Okay, and a lot of these will say, if you do not have this type of unit, you can order like 1 unit of your choice, or something to that effect. And then there's other ones for the armor divisions here, the tanks, that'll let you do something similar. There's reinforcement cards, like mechanics and medics and mechanics, rather. It'll let you roll a bunch of dice, and if your symbols match up to a different unit that's been attacked and chipped away at, you can reinforce them up to the number of figures in each unit. So that are the 2 different types of cards. Okay, now on a player's turn during the player card phase, a player will choose one of these command cards and play it. Okay, they're saying, I'm playing this card. And then they will do whatever the card says during the order phase, which is the next phase. Now, to order a unit, if you're using a sectional card, you'll see how many units in what section of the card you can order, and then you will give the order to units in that section. Okay, and again, the sections are these dotted red lines. There's 3 sections, a right, left, and a middle, and then you would simply order those units. If a unit is in a hex that is divided by 2 different sections, like this one here, you can order that unit to do whatever you want to do, whether it be move or battle, in either of those 2 sections. So during the order phase, the player will say, I played this command card, so I can move 2 units and then they will point out which 2 units they're going to move. Now when you do this, you have to abide by all terrain rules and all that, and we'll get into that in a second. But let's say the allies here said, I'm going to use this probe card, I'm going to move 2 infantry units in the middle. I'm going to move this guy and this guy, those units. Okay, and now I'll bring us into the next phase, which is movement. Okay, now when the player orders their guys to move, they will move all of the units that they ordered, okay, and then they will go into the attack phase. But while they're moving them, they must obey not only the unit movement restrictions, but terrain and obstacle movement restrictions, if there are any. So, we played the probe card, we ordered this unit and this unit to move. Now, infantry can move 1 space and then battle, or they can move 2 hexes and then battle. Okay, so we'll say these guys here, they're going to move 1 hex. Okay, which means they can still battle. Okay, now if this unit here, the second unit we're going to issue an order to would move, they could go 1, 2. Okay, and now, unlike this first unit here, they cannot battle. They're in the next phase, and we'll get into that in a second. Next we have armor units here. Okay, armor units can move up to 3 hexes and then still battle. Final type you have here are artillery units. Now artillery units work a little differently. They can either move 1 hex, okay, and all of the figures in that unit would move, and then they would not be able to battle, or they can simply not move, and then they would battle in the next phase. Let me note here, if an artillery unit is in a bunker, they cannot move in or out of that bunker. They're kind of stuck there. And that's the rule of thumb for all of the units. You can either move and battle, or move and not battle, depending on the unit, or you could choose not to move at all and then battle. Now, like I said, there's some terrain and obstacle effects, okay? We'll talk about them a little bit now. First, we have hills, which do not have any movement restrictions. They do have some line of sight restrictions, and we'll get to that in the next phase of the game, the battle phase, but for now, we'll just go with the movement restrictions. Next, we have forests. Now, forest does have a movement restriction. If you move into a space that has a forest in it, then you must automatically stop. And the turn that you move into a space with a forest, you cannot battle. So say that this unit moved from here to here, even though they could move twice and not battle. Since they entered the forest, they must immediately stop and they cannot battle. Next we have hedgerows, which aren't in the scenario we're doing, but I just flipped one over to show you how they work. Okay, now with hedgerows, the only way a unit can move into a hedgerow is if they are in an adjacent hex of the hedgerow. Okay, so this unit here would move from this hex, which is adjacent to it, into the hex of the hedgerow. Okay, now like the forest, once you enter the hedgerow, you have to stop, and you cannot battle the turn that you moved into a hex of a hedgerow. And to move out of a hedgerow, you must move into a space adjacent to a hedgerow, and then stop. You cannot move on anymore. With hedgerows, I couldn't go 2 spaces away and then move into it. I'd have to be in a space adjacent to it and then move into it. In order to move into a hex with a town or village, depending on what the scenario depicted is at, the unit can move in and then they must immediately stop, like the forest and the hedgerow. Okay, and then again, they cannot battle the turn that they moved into the town. The only thing that you really have to worry about with rivers is they're impassable. You cannot move across them unless they have a bridge token on them. Ocean hexes work out a little differently. If you are in an ocean hex, you can only move 1 space, no matter what unit type you are. Now, if you're moving onto a beach, you can only move a maximum of 2 spaces. Okay, so let's say the infantry unit moved from this surf hex here to the beach hex. He can move another space if he wishes to, or he could choose to stop and battle. Whereas the tank, who can normally move up to 3 spaces, can only move 2 spaces, and then they must stop. And now, as I said, some obstacles will also have some movement restrictions and terrain or line of sight restrictions. We'll get into the line of sight the next phase. Now, first we have these wire obstacles, okay? When a unit moves into a hex with them, they must stop. Next we have sandbags. They do not have any movement restrictions to them. And these are both removable obstacles. Okay, and then we have a couple fixed obstacles. First we have these hedgehogs here. Now with the movement restrictions, these only affect tank and artillery. Okay, they're impassable by tanks and artillery, but infantry can move through them without any worry about movement restrictions. And then the final obstacle with movement restrictions anyway we have are bunkers. Okay, and these are on the opposite side of the bridge tiles. Okay, now with bunkers, they are also impassable by artillery and armor. Infantry may move into a space with a bunker and then still battle. Then they have some battle rules, and we'll get into them in the next phase, which is actually coming up now. Okay, so now we did the first 3 phases. Okay, we played a card, we ordered units, we moved the units. Now we'll go into battling. Okay, now battling has 3 different steps to it. First step is we're going to have to check the range and take into effect any line of sight restrictions. The range varies from unit to unit, and the range is used to determine how many of these battle dice you're going to roll. We'll start off with the infantry here. Infantry can roll 3 dice if the enemy unit is in an adjacent square to it. They can roll 2 dice if the enemy unit is 2 hexes away from them, and they can roll 1 die if the enemy unit is 3 dice hexes away from them. Okay, anything beyond that they cannot fire at. Okay, and that is if they have a line of sight and no restrictions. We'll get into that in a second. Now, as I said before, infantry can move 1 space and then battle, or they can move 2 spaces and then not battle. So you got to remember that when you're ordering these guys around. Tanks, they work a little differently. Like I said, tanks can move 3 spaces and then battle. And then, if there is no line of sight restrictions, tanks will fire at an enemy unit up to 3 hexes away, and each hex they will be able to roll 3 dice. So, if it were adjacent, they'd be able to roll 3 dice, 2 hexes away, 3 dice, 3 hexes away, 3 dice. And then anything beyond that, they cannot have fire at. Now, finally, we have artillery, and they work a lot differently than tanks and infantry. Artillery can fire up to 6 hexes away, and they have no line of sight restrictions. Usually. This scenario is a little differently, but usually there's no line of sight restrictions. Okay, now their range is 3 dice from the first 2 hexes away from them. So, if an enemy unit was here or here, they'd roll 3 dice. Okay, the next 2 hexes would be 2 dice. So if the enemy were in this space here, or this space here, it would be 2 dice. And then finally, the 5th and 6th hex away from the infantry unit is 1 die. Okay, anything beyond that, they cannot fire at. So that's their range. Okay, depending on the unit, you'll roll a number of dice depending on what hex the enemy unit is away from the unit you're attacking with. Okay, now let's talk about line of sight. And we'll start off with basic unit line of sight. Okay, now, if one unit is adjacent to another unit, okay, say this unit's going to battle, it's adjacent to this unit, they can fire at the enemy because there is no block of sight with the unit. Okay. However, if another friendly unit were side by side and they were behind these 2 units, their line of sight would be blocked to the enemy. Okay. So if it's only 1 unit blocking their part of their view, their line of sight, they have line of sight. If it's 2 units, then they do not have line of sight. Okay? And to determine line of sight, we would pick a point in the middle of 1 hex to another hex and see if it's unobscured in a straight line. Okay, so that's basic unit line of sight. This also has the same effects on armored units. Okay, artillery units ignore line of sight completely. In a situation like this where the hexes do not, line up in a straight line, what we do is go from the center to the center. Okay, and to figure out the range, we would say this is 1 hex, 2 hex, 3 hexes away. Then we figure out our how many dice we'd roll from that. Okay, then we get into terrain line of sights. Okay, now in normal line of sight, if there is terrain or some other obstruction, okay, along the edge of a unit's line of sight, it would not normally block their line of sight. So this infantry unit could shoot this infantry unit, okay, even though part of their line of sight runs along the edge of these two hill hexes. However, if there's two obstacles, like here we have these hills and then this city, okay, and they are positioned on two sides of their line of sight, it does block their line of sight. Okay, first we'll start off with the easiest line of sight, which is rivers. Rivers do not block line of sight. So say we had an infantry unit up here, okay, and they were going to attack this tank unit. This river hex does not block their line of sight. Neither ocean or beach hexes block line of sight. Next we have forests. Say we had an infantry unit here who wanted to attack this infantry unit here. They could not because a forest tile will block their line of sight across, okay? Now, if the infantry unit were in a hex with a forest, it would not block their line of sight. But being that there is a hex in between the two units, it does block their line of sight. Okay, next we have hedgerows. Okay, they work similar to forests. Okay. You do not have line of sight if you are shooting across a hedgerow. You can if you are in a hedgerow. There are some battle restrictions, but we'll get into that a little bit later on. Next we have town and villages. They work similarly. Okay, if you are in a town or village, your line of sight is not blocked, but you cannot shoot across a town or village hex that will block line of sight. Now, the final type of terrain line of sight restriction is the hills, and they're a little more complicated, so we'll deal with them a little more in depth. If you are on the same level as an enemy unit, you have line of sight, even if that unit is several hexes away on the same mountain range or hill range. Say we had a situation like this where it's two different hill ranges, being that we're on the same level. We still have this line of sight. Okay, this is called the plateau effect. All right. However, if say we were one hex back, okay, and we were on two separate hills, then the hills would block line of sight. Okay, so if we were here, we're on two different hills, we have line of sight because we're on the same level. One back on two different hills, this hill would block their line of sight, even though they are on the same level. Now, hills work similarly to forest and hedgerows and on towns, where hills will block line of sight if you are shooting across a hill hex. Okay, so this unit here could not fire upon this unit because the hill will block their line of sight. Next, we'll get into obstacles. Okay, we'll start off with bridges because we have one out already. Okay, bridges do block line of sight, so this infantry unit could not attack this tank unit because this bridge blocks their line of sight. Then we have wire, sandbags, and hedgehogs. None of these block line of sight, so you don't have to worry about line of sight with these obstacles. Okay, and then finally we have bunkers, which do block line of sight. Okay, so say we had a bunker here, and we had a unit here. They could not fire on this artillery unit because this bunker blocks their line of sight. Okay, so that was the first part of battle, checking the range and line of sight. Okay, now we're going to check any obstacle effects with the battle dice. We have this guy here attacking this guy here. He would have 3 dice because they are adjacent to each other. So they would be able to roll 3 dice. Now, being that this infantry unit is in a town, it will give a penalty on how many dice it can roll. So we'll start off with towns since I'm using that as an example. Okay, now for infantry units, if they're going to attack another unit in a town, they would have to subtract 1 die, and then they would roll it out and figure out the results. If it were an armor unit, so instead we had this guy here, they would have to remove 2 dice instead of just 1. One more thing with towns, and that is, if an armor unit is in a town, attacking a unit outside of a town, they have a battle die restriction of 2. So, usually it's the attacker that will lose the dice. Next we have hills here. Okay, so we had this guy up here, this unit here, who's going to attack this guy on the hill. Okay, they're 1 hex away, so they would be able to roll 3 battle dice. Okay, now usually with hills, you would lose 1 battle die for either units attacking that are infantry or armor. Okay, so if either one of these 2 units tried to attack this infantry unit, they would lose 1 battle die. Okay, and again, if this infantry unit were here instead of right adjacent to it, they would be able to roll 3 dice, and then 2 dice normally, but because it's on the hill, they would have to remove an additional die, leaving them with 1 battle die. Now, this only takes effect if the unit that we're attacking them is below them. Okay, if they're on the same level, then there is no battle die restriction. If a unit were attacking another unit in a forest, they would have to roll 1 less battle die if it were infantry. Okay, 2 less if it were armor. Okay, so if this unit was attacking this unit, instead of rolling 3 battle dice, they would only roll 2 battle dice. Okay, now for infantry units who wish to battle a unit inside of a hedge grove, there is a battle die penalty of 1 die. Okay, if it were a armored unit trying to battle inside of a hedge grove, it would be a -2 battle dice. Okay, so for this guy here, this armored unit fighting against these infantry in the hedge grove, instead of rolling 3 dice like they would normally do, okay, being that this unit's in the hedge grove, they would have to remove 2 because this is an armor unit. Units in the ocean cannot battle. Okay, on beach hexes, there is no battle restrictions. Okay, so if this tank here rolled against these 2 units here, they rolled the 3 infantry symbols, these 2 guys would be eliminated, removed from the board. Now we have obstacles, so let's get into them. Okay, bridges, there are no battle dice restrictions on. Next we have the sandbags. Okay, now the sandbag affects all sides of the hex that the unit is in, not just the way it's facing. Okay, and when a player is going to tag a unit in the hex with a sandbag, they have a battle die restriction of 1, whether it would be infantry or armor. Now, wire has a restriction if you are in the same space as a wire. If you are in a space with wire, you can choose to remove the wire and not battle. Okay, or you can battle and have a 1 battle die penalty. Okay, so you have to subtract 1 battle die. For infantry, if you are armor, you can move into a hex with wire and then remove it and still battle. Okay, and they have no battle die penalty. Hedgehogs do not have any type of battle die restriction. Bunkers, on the other hand, do. Okay, so if we had a unit in a bunker, then an infantry unit attacking a bunker would have a 1 battle die restriction. Okay, an armor unit attacking a unit in a bunker would have a 2 battle die penalty. Obstacle and terrain battle dice restrictions do not accumulate, okay? They're not cumulative. So, say we had this infantry unit here on top of this hill in a bunker, okay? And this armor unit was going to attack the infantry unit. Normally, it would be a 1 die penalty because they are on a hill, and then a 2 die penalty because they are in a bunker. But again, these do not cumulate. Instead, you would just pick the highest battle dice penalty, in this case the bunker for the armor unit, and you would subtract that many dice. So instead of rolling 3 dice to attack this infantry unit, they would only be able to attack 1 die with 1 die because they would have to subtract 2. Okay, so now we're going to get into the results of the battle dice. So for this example, we'll take these guys here, this infantry unit attacking this infantry unit. Okay, now check the range. It's 3 dice, so you would roll 3 dice. However, since they are in a space with this wire, they could choose to either not battle and remove it, or remove 1 die as a penalty. Okay? and they are attacking this unit here, which is in a town, which has another 1 die penalty for infantry units. So you would subtract another die, and then you would roll the die and see what the result is. If they roll a side of the die that has the same figure they are attacking, then it would be a hit. You would remove 1 figure for the amount of symbols rolled for that figure. If it is a grenade, it is also considered a hit for whatever unit it may be, for all 3 types of units: armor, infantry, or artillery. If this player had rolled anything other than that grenade or the figure symbol for that unit, then it is considered a miss. If a star symbol is rolled, it is considered a miss. If this flag symbol is rolled, then first we would check the amount of hits. Okay, so say we rolled 2 dice, we had an infantry and a flag unit. We'd resolve the hits first, so this unit would lose 1 figure. And then the flag means that they would have to retreat to a hex towards their line. Okay, so the Germans would have to retreat this way, America would have to retreat this way. Okay, and then they would have to move out to another hex. Okay, and it would be 1 hex per flag rolls. So if there were 2 flags rolled, they'd have to move 2 hexes back towards their line. Now, if we had a situation like this where they cannot retreat because of friendly figures blocking them from doing so, then you would lose 1 figure for each flag rolled. You also have to take into consideration terrain effects. Okay, rivers are impassable other than with a bridge. So if this tank unit had to retreat, it could not go through the water, so it would be eliminated. Units cannot retreat into an ocean hex. So if the German infantry here were attacking this armor division and they rolled this, the armor division would lose 2 tanks for the armor symbols being rolled, and then being that they had to retreat and they can't retreat in the ocean hex, they would actually lose all 3 figures. Okay, now there is a special rule with artillery in bunkers with the retreat die. Okay, now say we had this result here. 1 artillery unit would be destroyed because of the grenade, and the other one would have to retreat. But artillery in bunkers cannot retreat. So if a retreat die is rolled and an artillery unit is in a bunker, they are automatically destroyed. Now with sandbags, if a unit has to move out of the hex with the sandbag is removed from the board. When one army attacks an opposing army and they eliminate all the figures in that unit, 2 things will happen. First, all but the last figure will be removed from the board. Okay. Second, the last figure will be placed on their victory point track to showing that they've gained 1 victory point. Okay, and then the next thing that'll happen is the player whose unit eliminate the opposing player's unit can do what is called taking ground if they are in a hex adjacent to the enemy unit, meaning they can move all their units into the hex that the opposing player's figures were in. This also works with retreat. If an enemy unit was forced to retreat, then the attacking unit can move into the hex that the enemy unit retreated from. Okay, now this only works with infantry and armor units. Artillery units cannot take ground. Armor units have a special rule, which is called armor overrun combat. If armor units are in a close assault, which is any battle that is in a hex adjacent to them, okay, and this works both for infantry and armor. If they eliminate the troops in that hex, okay, like this guy did here, he rolled an infantry unit and a grenade attacking the 2 units that were there, or the 2 figures that were there. There are no more. They can choose to overrun, which means they can move into that vacated hex, and then they could attack again. Okay, now you can only do this once per round. Okay, but if once per activation for that unit, I should say. Okay, but if, say, the tanks here, they eliminate this force again, okay, then they can also take ground, okay, but they could not do the overrun combat again, meaning they could not take over that hex and then attack again. Okay, and with battle, all terrain and battle dice restrictions apply with overrun and taking ground and stuff like that. Okay, now the last phase of a player's turn is to discard the card that they played, okay, and then draw a new command card from the draw pile. If the draw pile ever runs out, they would shuffle all the discarded cards and create a new pile. Okay, and then play would move on to the next player, and this will continue until, like I said, the victory point condition is met either by eliminated troops or by certain objectives in the game. So that's the basic gist. Now we're going to talk a little bit about the special units, and then we'll be ready to play. Depending on the scenario, players may have special force units. There are several different types, okay, but basically what will happen is, say we'll use the Rangers for example. We will place one of these placards, these tokens, on the unit of infantry that represents Rangers. And then with the elite Rangers and Commando special force units, they can move twice and still battle instead of just moving once in battle or move twice and not battle, like a regular infantry unit would do. Okay, so that would be Rangers, the elite German troops, or the Commandos for the English. Okay? Now, we also have elite armor division. Okay? And basically what will happen there is, instead of starting off with 3 units, 3 figures in that unit, they would get 4 units in that unit. 4 figures in that unit. Okay? Alright, and then finally we have the French Resistance. Okay, they work a little bit differently. Okay, say we had this unit here is the French Resistance. Okay, now, the first thing that's different is they will only get 3 figures instead of 4. Okay, and then any terrain that would prevent you from attacking the turn that you went into them is eliminated. Okay, so if the French Resistance were to move in the hedgerows on one turn, okay, then they would still be able to attack, unlike any normal forces, which would have to move into that hex and stop. Okay, it works the same with the forest and the towns. Okay, another one is if during battle French figures would have to retreat, they can move 1 to 3 hexes back instead of just 1 hex per battle die. Okay, it's their choice. And that is how you play Memoir 44.